Hi, Brandon Monroe here, and you're listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Well, as the guys on Fox would say, have you ever?
No, I've never.
No, I have never, and that really sums up everything that happened this weekend at Martinsville. I'm Brandon Monroe, and alongside me, as always, is Mark Chavez, and man, Mark, I don't know where to start. Just absolutely insanity over the course of the weekend.
It was.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just crazy.
It was an interesting weekend, that's for sure.
Yes. From start to finish. Let's just jump right into it. Let's start with Saturday. And honestly, what I thought was going to be the biggest story probably of the weekend until maybe what we saw in the Cup race. But let's set the stage here. Late in the race in the Xfinity Series, Brandon Jones, must-win situation by the end of the day here. Him and Ty Gibbs, they trade bumpers on a couple of restarts late in the race, and we get to the last one. Brandon Jones lines up behind Ty Gibbs. He bumps him up the track. They head off into turn 1 and 2 the following lap, and Ty Gibbs just yard sailed him. On a teammate, I know Brandon Jones is leaving at the end of the year, but they are still teammates. Joe Gibbs would have had 2 cars go into the Final Four. Said they only have one, as Ty Gibbs won the race, who should be noted was already locked in, did not need to do what he did.
To me, that's the important aspect. You're not just other teammates. If you're not locked in, you do what you got to do, but you're locked in. And at that point, I think doing what he did is over the line, unless there's, payback is, obviously a thing that could happen. Don't think there's really any payback here. I know Brandon Jones won the race in which Ty Gibbs was mad at being Martinsville earlier in the spring, but he wasn't mad at Brandon Jones. He was mad at Sam Mayer and I'm sure other people involved. Just completely over the line. 100% over the line. I really think if Ty Gibbs gets anything at Phoenix, he has it coming.
Yeah, if
I'm anyone racing him for a championship, I honestly probably take the mentality of if he's in front of me, well, I'm going to wreck him before he can wreck me.
I don't think I've ever seen the amount of people within the sport just come out and say how wrong that move was. You had current drivers in all 3 series, retired drivers, media members. Really, it's just, everybody against Ty Gibbs there. And I think everybody is in the right. Ty Gibbs, the only one in the wrong. He comes down, doubles down, tries comparing himself to Jesus in his post-race interview on Sirius XM. I don't know if there's a kid more delusional in the sport than him right now. It's bonkers to me how disconnected he is from reality.
He thinks that the sport revolves around him, that the team revolves around him, and maybe Noah Gregson's right. Maybe they should just rename it to Ty Gibbs Racing.
Yes, hey, if he keeps acting the way he is, you're probably going to see just a mass amount of people leaving that team. I would not shock me one bit. I mean, you look at the Cup Series, Martin Truex Jr. ain't going to stick around for that much longer. He's getting up there in age. Denny Hamlin has his own team, and right now, depending on how things go, if you see a little dip in Joe Gibbs Racing moving forward, and it has anything to do with Ty Gibbs being there, 2311 is going to be the number 1 Toyota team, and I think a lot of people probably feel that way right now too. So
I mean, I think if you're Toyota, right, you 2311 a lot more marketable of an organization from their ties with Michael Jordan to having the only currently African American driver in the Cup Series, having a very, very popular and talented young driver coming over in Tyler Reddick. I just think right now the future looks very bright for 2311, whereas Joe Gibbs Racing feels like it's just has a monster headed to the series here with probably, I mean, we all expect next year, but I mean, at the latest, I think would be 2 years.
I mean, the only bright spot I could see for Joe Gibbs Racing right now is Christopher Bell. That's really it. I mean, you got older drivers, you got drivers leaving. Yeah, you have Ty Gibbs coming up, but this could be one of those things where if he doesn't clean up his act, you're going to say, was it worth it, 5 years down the road? And, man, I was there in the spring race, and the amount of boos and chants that the fans got going after that race, after he got into that fight with Sam Mayer, that was loud. That was right up there when Denny took Chase out. Races I've been to in terms of the crowd reaction. This seemed like it topped it. I mean, what can you do? That's how he's going to act, and he's going to be in a rude awakening when he gets to the Cup Series if he continues to do that. That's for sure.
He's not just racing like this and getting out of the car. If he had got out of the car and just said, you do what you can for a win and left it at that, like, I still would think it was a dirty move. But I think the animosity around it is a lot less. But he gets out, he acts arrogant about it, and then literally compares himself to Jesus. Like, literally, not like even hyperbole, like literally his own words compared himself to Jesus.
The only good that came out of that is the only good that came out of that is we got to see Jesus at the racetrack today.
That is true.
That's I don't know who that guy was on pit road, but
these Cup guys are not going to put up with this. Oh, no. He is really lucky that it's Brandon Jones he bumped out of the way and not basically any other driver in the garage, because I think any other driver in the garage, and
I mean,
there's almost 0% chance Ty Gibbs win the championship this weekend.
I mean, if that was me, he did that too. He wouldn't have to worry about me at Phoenix. I probably would have left the track in a cop car. And maybe Noah Gragson feels the same way, because I don't know if you caught that in the post race. He came up to Brandon Jones when he was going or doing interviews after, and Noah just said, "I go get him, just go get him." So
Noah also tweeted a lot of reference to just the team that Brandon Jones is going to is a team, and is the team themselves act like they're a family with each other, not just one team revolving around a brat kid.
Mm-hmm. Even though I think a lot of people wanted to see Brandon Jones do something, we still got some fights coming out of that Martinsville race. Austin Hill, very up and down day. Ended up finishing 9th through all the issues he had, but we're mentioning him right now because he got off one of the best punches I think I have ever seen in a fight down there in the pits.
I'll tell you what, I would not want to take a punch from Austin Hill.
I mean, that one, I don't know what's going to come of it. I would probably expect fines, but hey, if you listen to Austin Hill, he told Myatt Snyder to get, and Myatt Snyder didn't get, and he got decked. That was a all-timer for sure. I don't know how many of our listeners feel about fights, but as Kevin Harvick would say, it's part of the sport. The sport was made on stuff like that, and maybe NASCAR puts their foot down and delivers harsh penalties to Austin Hill there, but I'm sure we're going to see that probably in a commercial or something comes next year. But just crazy amount of action in this race. And, we talk about the fight and we talk about what Ty Gibbs did. How about that battle between AJ Allmendinger and Justin Allgaier late in the race?
It was intense. It was aggressive. I mean, AJ definitely the aggressor there for a lot of it, but I mean, he was racing to get his way in, and it ultimately did not work out for him, and he held his head high and, knew he gave it all he has, wasn't upset or anything. Always is upset in the car, but that's just AJ. Like, I don't remember the last time they talked about him in a race and did not say that he's screaming on the radio, because that's just kind of what AJ does. But yeah, I mean, a good race. Unfortunate for AJ, he's not going to, it looks like, in his career, get an Xfinity championship. Never say never, I guess. He could go back and try to win one in a few years' time, but really solid season. Really solid round, just, not quite enough to get there.
No, I mean, could have went a little differently there. The battle he had with Allgaier, just tough racing, beating and banging, door to door, bumping and rubbing, however you want to call it. Just unfortunate there. It looks like they got side by side coming out of turn 4 late in the race, and Justin's tailpipe probably just caught one of AJ's tires and cut it down. And that's racing. But, I think both guys, they, Justin was sorry after the race, and AJ was like, no hard feelings. That's just racing. And they had a good moment in the pits after. And, that's what racing's all about right there. You just have two guys going at it, doing whatever they can to advance to the next round. And, ultimately that battle did matter because Brandon Jones didn't win the race, unfortunately. Had Brandon Jones been able to not get wrecked, Justin Allgaier would be out. I mean, there was a lot of drama there in the last 30, 40 laps of that Xfinity race. I was saying during it was an all-timer. It was going to be a classic, and it was. Unfortunately, for some of the wrong reasons comes the end of the day. But all in all, that was one of the best races I think the Xfinity Series has put on all year, and it says a lot because I think a lot of people would agree that they might have the best, all-around car package in the sport right now.
I know it produces great racing. The race is great. The cars are great. It can take a hit and it keeps going, and it can take a hit and the drivers don't necessarily feel it. All around great race. I mean, that sets up for what'll probably be a really intense battle at Phoenix. One second coming of Jesus, I guess, against Redneck Jesus.
Yeah, this race team, man, that's a lot of Jesus out there. But Junior Motorsports, man, three cars in the final four. Obviously, Noah and Josh Berry, who won races earlier in the round, and then Allgaier getting in on points. I think that's something we also have to bring up here, just how dumb it was of Ty Gibbs to do that. We were talking about this the other night, just going into Phoenix, as good as Brandon Jones is there, Justin Allgaier is better. You're better off having Noah Gragson in the championship for if you're Ty Gibbs, and instead you open the door for someone who, that's arguably his best track.
Yeah, I think they're both obviously good, but I think also, I'd still rather take my teammate than having one team have three drivers against me.
I mean, that too.
And now you effectively are down a teammate because Brandon Jones ain't going to cut you any slack. Not coming back next year has no reason to cut you any slack. Quite frankly, no one in the field does. And I would be honestly pretty surprised if Ty Gibbs walks out of Phoenix with the championship.
Yeah, just to back up the Allgaier thing, in 24 starts at Phoenix, 2 wins, 8 top 5s, 16 top 10s, a pole, 498 laps led, an average finish of 8.7. And a lot of those,
had a top 5 this year too. Mm-hmm. I don't remember they had a speeding penalty or what. I think he got a top 10 still.
Yeah, but I mean, and a lot of those starts too in his Xfinity career, you got to go back to when Cup guys were running wild in the Xfinity series. So, I mean, he would have some even better numbers if we had the same rules in place now, probably. So, this really is one of his best tracks. And I'm with you in terms of, having Brandon Jones would definitely be better, having a teammate in there. But just allowing somebody like Justin Allgaier in, because that's what you did by making the move you made. You have a tougher competition now in that race next week at Phoenix for the championship. It wasn't going to be easy for you to begin with. Now you just made it harder. I just really low IQ move there by the second coming himself.
It was pretty bad, and I hope he gets things paid back to him. People race you the way you race people. But going on to some other people in the race, Sheldon Creed finished second. Looked for a second. Maybe he'd be able to get to Ty Gibbs, because I feel like after he watched what Ty Gibbs did to Brandon Jones, Sheldon Creed wouldn't have had any issue moving Ty Gibbs out of the way for the win. But get second, rounding down the season, certainly had some good runs in the playoffs and right before it. It's a good run for him. Riley Herbst, a third, another great finish. I actually saw maybe they're just a fan of Monster, but I saw, I think, a tweet. I think that it might have actually been shared by on Twitter, where it was the girl with the sign that said Ty Gibbs #1 fan or something. But the hat she was wearing was a Riley Herbst hat. Which at that point you have to start to wonder, is she just a fan of both Monster drivers, or just a fan? It seems like a weird coincidence to be a fan of both Monster drivers when they have nothing to do with each other, other than they both drive Monster cars.
I think they grew up friends. At least they used to, before Joe let Riley not have a ride with the team anymore. But
that's possible.
Yeah. But no, I would agree. Know who you're rooting for if you're gonna go out there and represent.
Well, don't root for Ty Gibbs for sure.
Well, that's also true. Can't argue that.
Sam Mayer didn't make it through, obviously, but finished 6th. Well, it's effectively, obviously, there's one race left, but let's be honest, for most of these guys, it is the end of their season now. Especially the playoff guys that were racing to try to make it in. Solid rookie year overall. Nick Sanchez brought it home 7th. Really solid finish for him. Very interested where he's going to be next year, since it's been announced that Parker Kligerman actually going to be in this car. I thought that Nick Sanchez was potentially a candidate for it. I think he's shown enough that he certainly deserves to be in something. His first top 10, but had top 15, top 10 almost runs at Texas and Vegas as well. Ran in the top 15 for a good chunk of Homestead too. So I think he is closing out the season in this car at Phoenix. But a good run for him. Blaine Perkins, man, top 10. I know a lot of people criticize that move when it was not that it was necessarily a choice of the team necessarily in terms of just bumping out Brett Moffitt for Blaine Perkins, but I know he was talked about getting some of the rides, and I think a 10th is a lot better. Listen, a 10th is better than anything Jeb's done in that car this year.
That's a really good point. I mean, Perkins, granted it was Talladega, he did win a stage last year. I felt like he was getting too much hate when they bumped Moffitt out and they announced he was going to do some of the races. So I'm pretty happy that he was able to get that top 10 finish at the end of the day.
Now, to be slightly fair to Jeb, he did finish 11th in this race, so he was almost in the top 10. But, I mean, Jeb has now gone through almost an entire season. You have one race left where he does not have a top 10 in the Xfinity Series in a car that should 100% be able to get top 10s. Maybe State Water Heaters is pumping a lot of money in, and Jeb will keep the ride that way.
Oh, he's not keeping that ride. He's already gone.
True.
He's already leaving 27. But maybe State Water Heaters can get him a ride somewhere else.
Keep a ride somewhere, but he is just to say. I think this should, in all reality, close the book on Jeb Burton's career in remotely competitive rides. Doesn't help that he's done a lot this year as well to kind of sour public perception on him, but just not been a good year. And I mean, if you can't produce in those kinds of cars, when Anthony Alfredo has basically pretty easily outdriven you most of the year. And then this is not a knock on Alfredo. I think Alfredo is a decently talented guy. When him and Myatt Snyder were sharing the 31, I thought Alfredo was actually, or the
21.
Yeah. I thought Alfredo was actually more impressive in it than Myatt Snyder. So, and obviously Alfredo not impressive in the Cup Series. It was front row last year. But to be fair, I don't think anyone, including Anthony Alfredo, thought he should really be in the Cup Series at that point.
Yeah, that was kind of just like he needed the ride.
Kind of just was the best thing available. So, yeah. 12th for Raja. Solid day. Was running in the top 10 at points. Pretty beat up car at the end of the race too. So solid top 10. Him and Nick Sanchez. I think the ARCA Series is the ARCA Series. I would have liked, if Raja's in the same boat with Daniel Dye, I would have liked to see him win races. But at the end of the day, I'm over the existence of the ARCA Series and trying to use it to judge talent at all, really. So I think they deserve to be seen in something. I know one thing float around, maybe Raja in a Spire truck. I think Spire going full time with a second driver in the Cup Series, at least, is with a guy that, Ty Dillon isn't anything crazy, but he is usually pretty clean. Not so much it felt like once he lost his ride at Petty GMS, feels like everything came undone there, but maybe they're starting to take themselves a little bit more seriously. Have a full-time truck team would be good for them. Derek Griffith, 15th in the 26 as well. Solid run for him. And Alex LeBay in another top 15. He's kind of just top 15 a lot this year. Very, very, I feel like, underrated year for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's I would definitely agree with that. I know some of the other guys, obviously, not necessarily notables and highlights of people that outran their equipment, but AJ Allmendinger came home 16th with the issues that he had. Josh Berry looked like at times he might have had a car to win the race. He was involved in a late accident with his teammates, actually. Sam Mayer kind of got into Justin Allgaier, and that sent him into Berry. He went around, he came home 20th, and of course Brandon Jones in 23rd after, I'll say it was probably his best race I've seen him run, at least recently, possibly ever. Nothing to show for it, and that just sucks.
I ultimately didn't work out, but I would like to say I championed Brandon Jones through pretty early on as a Phoenix contender, and he came one Ty Gibbs away from getting it. And I think most people would agree, did everything he needed to do, except I guess maybe should have just wrecked Ty Gibbs when he moved him out of the way.
I mean, we were watching the race, and I said it when they were coming off of turn 4. They were coming to take the white flag when Ty Gibbs cleared Sheldon Creed. I said, "Uh-oh," and before we could say anything else after that, Brandon Jones was on the wall. So that really sums up that. Off the racetrack, I think one important thing to say about the Xfinity Series before we move on here, Parker Kligerman going to be in the 48 car next year.
Yeah, I alluded to that earlier, but yeah, going to announce to the 48. It's obviously good for him. Good for that team. I expect them to be able to contend for a playoff spot next year. Whether or not I think they'll make it, we'll know that by the time the next season rolls around, just because we don't even know what cars are going to really be here. JGR is kind of a huge, just big question mark. We assume, I think, that the Sheldon Creed and Austin Hill will both be back in those cars. I would be shocked if Austin Hill wasn't, but a lot of unknown outside of JRM in the Xfinity Series right now. And I guess Colleague as well has solidified their stuff. So I certainly expect Parker in this. If the overall structure remains similar to this year, I would expect Parker to challenge for a playoff spot for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good move for that team. They obviously wanted somebody that could go out there and win races, and the 48 car did go to victory lane at Texas with Tyler Reddick earlier in the year. Parker's one of those guys, I'd say, probably not in the same exact boat as Landon Castle, of somebody that, we want to get a chance, because Landon never really had anything, other than when he was driving for Junior Motorsports.
I feel like for Landon, it was a lot more of people, it looked like he could do something and trying to see what he could do. Whereas with Parker, I think everyone knows he can win races.
That's a good point. I was going to get to that where, he's won before. We kind of know what Parker is, and I think everybody wanted Parker to get a chance. And with Landon, it was more of he's never had a chance. Let's see what he could do. But Kligerman in the 48 car next year, probably going to contend for a playoff spot. It's not going to shock me if he ends up in victory lane. Really good move. I'm a little sad that he got the ride, not because I don't want him in the car. Just I kind of wanted to see him go out there and contend for the truck title in the 75 truck. I was really hoping they were going to get enough sponsorship to run full time. And Parker did say he was going to be running that truck a little bit next year still, but that would have been crazy if they showed up there, Hendrickson Motorsports, and they made like a playoff run like that. That would have been a really, really good story given how small that team is. That's what I was hoping for. But I'm definitely not going to complain with him getting the 48 car. It's another quality driver in the series, and it should make the playoff battle next year pretty fun to watch. But, of course, our final four for the Xfinity Series is going to be Noah Gragson, Ty Gibbs, Justin Allgaier, and Josh Berry.
The same final four I predicted before the playoffs started.
And I'm sure you're going to take another victory lap when we preview that race here in a couple of days. But if it's all right with you, let's move on to the Cup Series race, which I don't want to start at the very end. So let's back it up a little bit. Christopher Bell leading the race late. There's a yellow flag when Landon Castle has problems with about 34 laps to go. Sets up a very interesting decision for the crew guys.
Even before that, it was a pretty standard race in terms of what we expected. Nothing too crazy. A little bit better for sure than the spring. Tires certainly mattered a little bit more. There were a little bit more comers and goers. Denny, though, dominated the middle half of the race. Chase led until pretty late in stage one. Got by Larson relatively early. Led for the rest of it. Denny got back by. And then it was just kind of Denny. Denny led, I think, every lap in stage two. 1 to 2 stages. Chase finished second in both stages. They got a ton of stage points. Everyone else didn't get as many. Byron got 0, the only playoff guy to get 0. Blaney got like 8 or somewhere in there. Chastain got like 4. Christopher Bell got some too, but he was in basically a must win, as was Chase Briscoe, so that didn't really matter. Byron actually goes a lap down at one point, as does Briscoe. Briscoe, we didn't mention this either, started up front, gets a penalty removing equipment from the box, and that felt kind of like the end of his race.
Yeah. That was very unfortunate when it happened because he had a rocket there at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, and then he did. He looked really strong, like he was going to be able to contend there. Like I said, yeah, Denny leads 203 laps up until lap 323. Then the caution comes out, and Denny's crew proceeded to just crap the bed the next 3 or 4 pit stops. We had later cautions, and he never gained a spot on pit road and usually lost at least a spot. Went from, I think, the lead to third. At that point, Christopher Bell inherited the lead, and similar to what most of us expected, you get out front and they just kind of were gone. No one could really. Chase could hang with him a little bit. Blaney hung with him a little bit on one of the later restarts. But then we do get the final caution with, I think, about, like you said, about 25 to go when Landon Castle somewhere, whenever the caution occurred, 25, 24. I know the restart was with 24 to go. I don't know when the caution itself occurred. And pit road, that was when it got crazy.
Yes, I mean, you have people coming in 2 tires, 4 tires, or in some cases staying out, like 2 of the Stewart-Haas drivers and Chase Briscoe and Cole Custer.
Could not have been a better pair of the two. I will say for Cole Custer, ran top 5 almost the whole race. Doesn't get the finish there. Ran top 5 almost the whole race. So I do want to give him some credit there.
I know it'll be interesting to see where he's at next year, but he's looked a little bit better without a certain somebody up on the box. So maybe that penalty was not a terrible thing for him at the end.
Yeah, at this point, I want to say their tires were like 80 laps old.
Mm-hmm.
They were old tires. But I mean, everyone pits in front of you. I did not think they were all going to come down to pit. I really didn't. I was surprised that everyone up to Chase Briscoe came down to pit. So Chase Briscoe, Cole Custer stay out, and then a few guys took 2 tires. I know Brad did. I don't remember who else did.
I think William Byron might have too. There was a handful of guys to the point where Christopher Bell, I think he lined up like 5th or 6th on that restart.
And it was pretty clean restart. At this point, also Denny and Chastain Chastain spun Brad at one point, got some contact, came down pit road, and never really got back into the top 10 throughout most of the rest of the race at that point. He was in that last stage when Bell was leading, he was out. He had more positions to gain than Denny, but he was out. But it was so hard to gain positions. He was out. Bell wins, obviously gets through. Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin both in on points at that point. Denny Hamlin and, like I said, Denny Hamlin and Ross restart, 12th or something.
Yeah, they were nose to tail. Obviously, they didn't line up that way because of the choose cone. But they were, like I think he said, 11th or 12th coming out of the pits. And it got dicey between those two for a while. Denny tried getting around Ross. It looked like for a while, he was going to make the pass. Ross would door him. He'd get by him. Ross would bump him. There was a moment there where Denny tried to drop in right behind Ross. And, heads up move by Ross. He was able to brake check him, close the lane, and he had his teammate Daniel Suarez behind him there. Didn't let Denny in. Looked really, really bad there for Ross for a couple laps. Denny was able to get by him, and luckily Ross, using his head, was able to keep the car clean. Denny's then moving up the field, which puts him in position to advance. Meanwhile, while that's going on, Christopher Bell is trying to run down Chase Briscoe and the rest of the guys in front of him. So we have these 2 battles going on where Ross and Denny, you're looking at the points. Can Bell move his way up and get in with the win? And, Briscoe leading right there at that point, it's still taking away a playoff spot, so that Ross and Denny battle matters. Brad Keselowski was able to get up there. He got to the back of Briscoe, and that's kind of when Bell was able to make his move when Brad started racing Chase for the lead.
Yeah, Brad got to Briscoe. He wasn't even really racing Chase for the lead. Like, he got there. I don't know if Briscoe just did the line different or what, but it looked like Brad had to slow down way more than he expected. And that was basically all she wrote for Brad and Briscoe. Bell got up there, got past Brad, got past Briscoe like the next turn, and then Bell checked out. Also, once Denny got past Chastain, Denny also checked out. Yeah, Denny passed people no problem. It went from Chastain being in to being tied, which Chastain had the tiebreaker to 3 or 4 points, and at that point, it felt like it was pretty secure. Bell got ahead, checked out. That felt like it was done once Bell got out ahead, unless there was a caution, obviously. Chase sliding back, and I think it was kind of a product of you don't need these points, which was true.
Yeah,
you didn't need the points.
Be safe.
Got to the point where he was right in front of Chastain. Chastain needing at that point a single point, and I was like, just let him go. Just let him go, Chase. This is not your fight to have. We know Ross will do whatever he has to do to get through to the next round.
Yep. And
Boy,
on that,
he did not disappoint.
Listen, I've never seen anything like that.
At the end of the day, in terms of the move and the impact it has, and what the box it's potentially opened, and what NASCAR will have to do, that's an entirely different discussion. He had the guts to try it, and it worked.
And for anyone that didn't see,
beyond full send, beyond full send, shifted, grabbed fifth, something they don't normally do here. Slams the gas, goes straight into turn 3, wall rides it out of 4, picks up, I would guess what that is, 5-6 spots.
It was enough to knock Denny Hamlin out
by 4 points over Denny Hamlin, and knocks the 9 car out of the owners' playoffs.
Yeah, so a lot of things going on there in that last lap. I still don't know how to feel about that move, because that is going to open up the door for a lot of different things moving forward.
I think my expectation is the door. I don't know exactly how. Maybe they'll just word it which isn't necessarily a good thing, but in a similar way they do other things, where you have to make an honest attempt to make the turn, which I think we have seen in other times. I don't like Carl at Kansas. I don't know that Carl knew 100% he would hit the wall. I thought there were some scenarios where that would stick. Like, I don't want to dissuade Carl's move at Kansas, what was a billion years ago. Larson's move at Darlington is probably the closest in the Cup Series anyway we've seen to this, because it was very similar. The difference being that it didn't work. And to be fair, you could argue it did work, just Denny happened to already be up high. Denny, for whatever reason, comes out of turn 4 low. Larson probably wins the Southern 500 last year.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. This, though, ain't nobody running the wall at Martinsville, and it just gave Ross a clear path to set a unofficial new track record at Martinsville. Fastest lap a Cup car's ever gone there. Again, it's something I've never seen.
This is the only track it will work to this degree. I am pretty confident in that. This is the only track it would work where if Ross needed to gain 5 spots, he could do it by doing this. Now, I think that there's certainly other tracks where it could work where you would gain a spot or two, especially if you were right near to someone. But I don't think it can be overstated just how much ground Ross gained with this move. Like, if Blaney pulls this move, Blaney probably wins the race.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, and obviously Bell wound up winning by almost a second, so he's not necessarily full on. I think he said Ross's lap was almost 2 seconds faster.
Yeah.
At least a second and a half faster than Bell's, which at any track is ridiculous, outside of maybe a road course. Even then, that's a big gain. But at Martinsville, that's literally like 5% of the lap faster. Like, that is ridiculous.
I will say, Bob Pockris tweeted this a couple minutes ago. A NASCAR spokesperson said that the move was within the bounds of the rulebook, and we'll discuss any driver concerns this week. So,
I don't think
that.
100% am on the side this should not have been penalized. I get NASCAR trying to do whatever they want. They set it up that way. You could argue this is detrimental to stock car racing, and I think you'd have a valid point. I do think this move could potentially end up being, but I think there will be something in place. I think you got to have an honest attempt. It was a great move, but I don't think it should be allowed every time. I don't think because again, if Ryan Blaney had pulled this move to win the race over Christopher Bell, it would have just been even crazier.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you don't want to have to put Bell in a position where he has to do this just to make sure he does win the race.
Yeah,
because at a track like Martinsville, over the last 20 years, how many races have there actually been where this move couldn't have let second place win the race?
Oh yeah, no, I mean,
not very many.
There's a lot, and man, this is my point. Is like, I hate that I personally have to hate this move because it is a great move, and you got to give Ross props for doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
He had an idea, and he did it. You know,
there are a lot of drivers that listen. 2020 going to turn 3, Kevin Harvick decides his best move is to wreck Kyle Busch. Ultimately, something that probably would not have worked out. Well, I mean, I guess it would have made Harvick get in, but then Brad, I think, would have wound up missing if
Kyle said he just would have parked it, so Denny got in. Yep.
But none of that matters if Harvick sends it full throttle, I guess, into turn 3 instead. Then we don't even reach today's scenario. But
but I mean, that's my point. Is that, you know, if it were up to me, if I ran the show, which I'm sure 99% of the people out there are happy I don't, I would have black flagged them. I would have called actions detrimental to stock car racing. Sorry, Ross, you can't do that. And I mean, that's just my personal opinion on it. Like, I love the move, but I hate it at the same time.
But I feel like part of you doing this is because this only happens because of the championship format.
Yes, no, exactly.
But and you can't penalize him for that.
You know,
that's the thing is, I agree 100% that this should cause a rule that makes it against it. But this is one we've seen, obviously nothing to this degree, but similar-ish moves that no one's called for a penalty before. And I feel like I've been pretty consistent with this. I don't think you can penalize something based on whether it was a success or a failure. And at the end of the day, this worked. I don't even know that I liked that it worked. I just liked that Ross was willing to try.
Yeah, I mean, props to Ross. You can't get mad at Ross.
I think I would have preferred this. It's hard for me to say I like Ross more than Denny. I'm not a huge fan of Ross's, and I've grown on Denny a little bit over the last few years. Still don't want Denny to win a championship, but I wish the move didn't work just because it wouldn't have opened this box that we've gotten to, and I don't think you can penalize Ross for that. I do think 100%, and I'm glad I'm not in charge of how you do it, because I don't think the intent should be to stop like Carl's moves at Kansas. And Carl's move at Kansas was a great move. It works sometimes. I think Joey Logano had an all-time L of a suggestion with, if you hit the wall, you can't gain positions.
Well, that's when you say all time, you mean like all time bad, right?
Yeah, an L, pretty bad. That's why I said all time L.
All time L. Okay.
Of take, like, just straight up awful. Like, could not be worse. Could not be worse of a suggestion.
Unfortunately, I feel like the only thing they could do is make it a judgment call, and we know how great NASCAR is with judgment calls.
The thing is, I do think for this one, it's pretty. While it's a judgment call, as long as they apply it correctly, because I think there are some that are close, right? I think we would agree, and I think most people would agree. Carl's move at Kansas, nothing wrong with it. Kyle Larson's move at Darlington is probably really close to straddling that line.
Yeah, an often forgotten one, Noah Gragson at Iowa in the Truck Series. I think that was more close to.
I'd have to go back and watch that one again.
It was a good one, man. Brett Moffitt won that race, but I'd say that one was more similar to Carl Edwards' move at Kansas than even Larson's.
And that's the thing. Like, if Carl, even if he hits the wall, if he doesn't lose enough speed and then keeps going and wins, then that's fair game. And I think that's the thing. We'll see what they do. I know in some very, very preliminary unofficial testing some of our friends have done, this move could theoretically work at Phoenix. It's certainly a lot harder, and I don't think you're going to make it work unless you consciously practice it on iRacing. I just don't think it can work. The walls are too weird, I think, to nail it the first time. And certainly, like Martinsville, to be honest, feels like it's where this move is just straight up the easiest. Turn radius, you slow down so much in the turns compared to the straightaways, especially when you consider like not just the speed that you were at the peak of the straightaways normally, but the speed you would be at if instead of braking, you continue to hit the gas there. Because that's the other big thing here is a lot of times these guys are lifting or at least lifting halfway down the backstretch. Instead of lifting halfway down the backstretch, Ross slammed it in a fifth and stayed on the gas. So the speed difference when you're watching this is indescribable.
I thought they sped it up the first time
like
they showed it
it's
back.
the most ridiculous looking thing I've ever seen.
And like, it's one of those things, man. Like, I saw it happen live, and it took me like a minute to process what the hell just happened. And then when they showed the replay, I'm like, nah, this is fake. Like, I've never seen anything like it. I know I've said that probably about a dozen times now, but there's really nothing else to say about it.
It is something else for sure. And like I said, this move just straight. I'm not gonna say it won't work at other places because I certainly think it's possible. I don't think it would ever work at a mile and a half, not to this degree. Like I think Carl's kind of move could work sometimes. It probably needs like perfect execution, a perfect situation. But I think there is a reality where Carl's move works. But if you do this, where you literally just full throttle it, it's not going to work at almost, if not any mile and a half.
No.
Darlington, it can work at just because it's turn 3 and 4, very similar to Martinsville, and that you slow down so much, but it's so easy to just stick it on the wall and keep it there. And the radius of the wall not that much greater than on the outside than it is on the inside, especially at Darlington, where it's like 2 lanes at best from the wall to where they normally run.
Man, so I'm seeing more videos of this from the stands right now. If you had a seat in 3 and 4 for this, just wow.
I don't even think that you probably are the same way. You don't even know who it is.
No, it's just a blur.
Like it's just a blur. Unless you were consciously watching Ross, like it's. I don't think he should have been penalized. I'm 100% okay with that. He had the guts to try the move. Other drivers have been in other situations that are similar to this here, and then they have not done it. He had the guts to try it. It worked. I don't think you punish him for that, but I definitely think I would kind of almost straight up be okay with a rule that the issue is next week at Phoenix. It would feel really bad if that's what happened. And if they want to just preemptively make it a rule there too, but I think you can make a rule that says at Martinsville you can't do this, at Phoenix you can't do this, because I don't think it's going to have to even bother to be a rule at most places. If someone wants to try this at, I want to say Atlanta, but I think we all know how stupid that would be. If someone wants to try this at Kansas again, like to this degree, by all means go ahead. I think there is 0% chance it works there.
Yeah, I think NASCAR could get away with that. I mean, we have different rules.
We have different rules for different tracks already.
Yep.
So I think if they wanted to take a case by case approach and made something about not hitting the wall, I still don't think Joey's rule is applicable, because at what point are you hitting the wall?
Right.
Like if you get ran up into the wall out of 4, but you still somehow manage to get by the guy, which seems pretty unlikely, but I'm not going to say impossible. So it's listen, if these were the kinds of issues we were dealing with last month, everyone would be much happier. I'm just gonna be honest.
That's fair.
Well, we don't feel great about this move, and a lot of people have concerns about the box that it could potentially open. Like, it was fun when it happened.
Yeah, no, I mean that's true. It definitely was fun when it happened.
I definitely think, and it's good. This is from a NASCAR perspective, things that NASCAR controls. As crazy as this sounds, this was probably the best weekend in 2-3 months, which is crazy because we knew this race was going to be terrible.
Yeah,
this race wasn't terrible. It wasn't good. It was not good. A lot of people are probably going to say it's good. It was not a good race. It just straight up wasn't.
Had a good
finish. It was not a good race.
Not a good race.
But was still, even the race itself, better than in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Low bar. Don't get me wrong. but at least it was better in the spring. Still, shifting is such a big issue here. Like, shifting is the biggest issue because it basically doesn't matter how bad you mess up the turn. It's also why the high line is able to run with the low line a lot better, I feel like, than in years past, because you just slam it down a gear, slam on the gas, and go. It's so hard to spin these tires, at least coming out of the turn. That's not enough horsepower. So still work needs to be done on this package for the short tracks. But all in all, even without the crazy shenanigans at the end, definitely a better race in the spring.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sure we already mentioned it, but just to run it back, your final four for the Cup Series: Joey Logano, who won at Las Vegas, Christopher Bell, who ended up winning at Martinsville, and Chase Elliott and Ross Chastain getting in on points. That's your final four heading to Phoenix.
I will say this: everyone basically was wrong, and Ross is in fact racing for a championship.
And I will also throw out there everybody calling me an idiot back in the summer, saying Christopher Bell was the dark horse to make the final four.
Hey, I just want to say I was on that train with you.
You were. Yeah, I wasn't directing that at you.
I know. I'm just saying. I was on that train for a good. You probably were on a little bit before me in terms of his championship, but we were both saying really early on how his chances of championship anyway, how under the radar he was. Started off the season real bad, but it climbed up in the points, had continued to rebound, would be 6th in points right now in the full season format. To Denny's credit, he would actually be 9th, so good rebounds for both of them. But 6th in points for Bell from the start of the season. I'm pretty sure in our first predictions, both of us had at least one of them. I think Denny probably in both cases, because Bell had already kind of started to turn it around, missing the playoffs. But once he got it turned around and it was looking good, it felt pretty clear that he had a serious shot at this. And I will say, just to push back on it a little bit, and maybe this is just a tactic for Phoenix, but you certainly, I feel like, had given up a lot of hope going into the Roval and going into Martinsville.
Well, going into the Roval, not the best road course record, and Toyota had been awful on the road courses, and you got to say, he caught a huge break with the sign being on the freaking track.
To be fair, he got a huge break in both races.
Huge break.
Needed a caution, and Denny's pit crew to just completely crap the bed.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he caught some breaks, but, again, he's probably not in this situation if Bubba Wallace doesn't decide to just junk Kyle Larson at Las Vegas. Bell's probably not in a must-win situation.
That is true.
So, I mean, yeah, I was down on him coming into the race, especially after he qualified 20th. I can't say I thought he was completely dead, because I did put some money on him at plus 10,000 to win this championship, which is what he was going into this race.
Yeah, they have not. I wanted to see if they had put up new odds yet, and we'll have to talk about them on our preview, because they have not yet. But
yeah, that's a huge jump. Anybody who got Christopher Bell going into Martinsville on championship bets, you're looking like a genius. And I'll say I'll give the people who did it for Brandon Jones too, because he was the same odds in the Xfinity Series. Even though you didn't get the result, you still look like a pretty smart person there.
You were you were a lot closer than the plus 10,000 odds would have ever expected you to be.
Yes. So definitely very good there. Also, I do want to point out here before we start moving on to other things, Denny Hamlin, if you go back to Pocono when they were disqualified, he lost 6 playoff points. One of those playoff points went to Ross because he ended up being the stage winner, and 5 of those went to Chase Elliott, who won the race. And both of those guys finished 4 points in front of Denny Hamlin today. So
even without giving them the points, right? Like just Denny winning alone would have been enough to make it through. But it is even more when you add in the fact that Ross still is clear by 3 if you just don't redistribute the playoff points. But Chase is in because of that win.
Yeah. So,
although to be fair, I don't know if he falls back as much either. It's hard to say for sure what kind of racing would have happened there. Certainly would not have full sent it like Ross did. So,
no, I mean, it's so many twists and turns this season. Like, if we're not having that conversation about Chase, if there's not a sign on the track, he wins the Roval, and at the same time, if he doesn't win Talladega, he's also out. So, not the best playoff run for Chase, but he did enough. And for the third straight year, he's going to be going to Phoenix with a shot at the championship. And I'm pretty sure that's all he cares about.
Yeah, I mean, he has a shot at the championship. The 9 team doesn't. It'll be real interesting if.
Let's put him in the 5 car.
I mean, they probably should. They won't. They won't. But honestly, though, at the same time, like keeping him this one is probably better for Hendrick too, though.
Yeah, gives him 2 shots. I would agree.
2 shots. It'll be real interesting to see how team championships are talked about. I mean, the best scenario, right, for Hendrick is Chase wins the championship, the 5 car finishes second, or reverse. I guess it doesn't really matter in terms of what Hendrick cares. And then it doesn't matter because they have the same number of championships either way. Who would have ever guessed that we're sitting here at the end of 2022? So Truck Series, Xfinity Series, Final Fours, drivers, owners, the same. Yet the Cup Series, something I don't think any of us ever expected to happen. Drivers and owners championships different, and not even because usually in the Xfinity and the Truck Series. It was a car that had a bunch of different drivers made it to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's that a driver that had to be replaced, Kurt, stopped Ryan Blaney from getting in, and ultimately, when the 45 was eliminated, Larson still made it through at the Roval. And now then Larson goes and wins Homestead, and now Larson's team is racing for a championship.
It's very bizarre. Didn't think that would happen in the Cup Series anytime soon. It's funny because, you go back about 10 years when Mark Martin was running the 55, you always thought, maybe the 55 could get in the Owners' Championship and make some noise, especially in 2012 and at least part of 2013.
I certainly think that car in this playoff format, 100% possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But once the charters happened, it just we've seen so few. We haven't seen a part-time car like that. That's competitive. Probably, until this year, I guess. The 16 is not uncompetitive, but probably the closest we've seen since then. And yeah, just wacky season.
Yeah, just I don't know if I want to see everything that's played out the way it has ever again, but we're going to remember 2022 in the NASCAR world, that's for sure.
We will certainly remember 2022.
Yes.
Looking at some of the other guys that were not just, fortunate. Larson, by the way, finished second today, so great Martinsville run for Kyle Larson.
Yes.
Cannot be understated. Logano, by the way, would have still made it without his. Well, I guess he wouldn't have actually. Well, no, he would have made it, but it would have been close without his win if he finished second. But those top 4 guys, I think it's pretty clear in terms of the round itself. Who Joey had a 2-point lead on Chase and Ross, Denny 6 back, then 23 back to William Byron. Never recovered from qualifying poorly, and the non-factor. I don't actually have. I wanted to see if anyone had posted yet not the full season standings, but the updated playoff standings, whatever they call them. The reseeded, I think, but I don't think that I have seen those yet because I could see Briscoe being 13th because he barely made it through each round and it had a terrible round this round. So
yeah.
But looking at some other guys, did a lot of what he had to do, but just wasn't there enough at the end. Ryan Blaney finished third. Crazy. Right, and this obviously could change if he gets a top 5 next weekend. He did get a top 5 at Phoenix last year and had a really good car in the spring. But right now, Ryan Blaney has 4 straight years with 11 top 5s.
Yeah, it'd be pretty Ryan Blaney to run 6 next week then.
Ryan Blaney now in his, what is this? Finishing his 5th year at Penske?
Yeah, 5th year. Mm-hmm.
Still no championship 4 appearance.
And might go winless this year.
Might go winless
shot at that.
Mm-hmm. He is young. It's hard to say he's the future of Penske because Joey Logano is only 4 or 5 years older than him.
Yeah, Joey's only 32, 33.
Joey is super, super young. I also would be shocked if Joey still races as long as Harvick does. Just because he has literally been racing forever. already. But yeah, 11 top fives, 4 straight years for Ryan Blaney. Highest finish in the standings, 6. I mean, the highest he could finish is 5th because he's never made, and that's where he is right now. Although I don't know if this is reseeded or not yet. So, Bubba Wallace, another top 10. It's Martinsville, probably one of his best tracks. Was up in the top 5 at one point, which was impressive since no one could pass. Solid season from him. Obviously, back from his suspension, solid race, and another top 10. And I'm very excited to see what him and Tyler Reddick will do next year. Tyler Reddick, speaking of,
didn't touch on that.
Weird issue. Don't remember. Short of really just carbon monoxide poisoning. Don't ever remember a driver pulling himself out mid-race because he did not feel well. But that is what Tyler Reddick did.
So, I honestly don't know if he's going to be in that car next week, and that's just because this seems like it could be a potential head injury. He had a hard crash at Homestead last week, and you come here, sounded like he got involved in just a checkup type of incident on a restart or early on in a run, and he just said his head started spinning and ended up parking the car. Very, very weird situation. Not something that I remember seeing anytime recently. The first thing that comes to my mind is when Dale Earnhardt had his issues in the 97 Southern 500 when he blacked out on the start of the race and got pulled from the car. And I think they actually threw Mike Dillon in there to finish the race out. But that's really the only other time I could remember something like that where, somebody had to get out of the car because of a medical issue. And really unfortunate for Tyler Reddick. Did have a good moment with Richard Childress there after in the garage, but it's very, very bizarre.
If this is a concussion, I think it just points to NASCAR needing to drastically overhaul the concussion protocol.
So we heard people say that these drivers can find a way to beat these tests.
Yes, I sure.
So you're not wrong.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, right, in the NFL, there is... And I'm not saying you need to be... especially lately in the NFL, maybe gone too far, for sure. And certainly not like Bowman, you're not pulling him from the race. It's just... It's not going to happen. But, I mean, if this is a concussion from last weekend, I find it hard to believe that Reddick should have been able to pass these tests to get into the car.
See, what I think could happen, and you've heard this from other things, where maybe he had really small injury potentially, because we don't know what's going on at this moment. But it could be one of those things where he was still able to pass these tests, and
that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying Tyler Reddick.
When do these tests? When do these tests occur? Right? Do they only occur at the infield care center after the crash? Because I think that's part of the issue if that's the case.
Yeah, because I think some people are probably thinking
probably before the next race. Honestly,
I think there's some people out there that are probably thinking Tyler Reddick found a way to cheat through the test, and that's what I'm saying.
I don't think that seems unlikely to be the case. I think it's more likely he managed to pass them on whenever it was. Whenever they are, I don't know if they're just, like I said, I don't know if they're just when they get out of the car. Pass them then and then experience things later. We saw, with Alex Bowman, right? I think we could have seen basically this exact situation, if this turns out to be a concussion, this exact situation pan out, because he didn't know that he had a concussion until he got into the
with Jimmy a couple days later.
Yeah.
till he was just messing around with Jimmy. Like, if he doesn't get in there, he goes. Maybe he still makes the decision come Friday or Saturday when they practice. But I think it's also a lot harder to make that decision when you're then already, you know?
I will say with Reddick's wreck at Homestead, that wasn't the same type of wreck that you saw with Kurt and Alex Bowman. He nosed it into the wall, which, I mean, we've seen some really bad head-on hits this year. Austin Cindric at Michigan, Austin Dillon at Atlanta. And they popped out and they seemed okay. I know. I think one of them was saying, it wasn't that bad of a hit. At least the front end, it definitely has more give than the rear. But that's what I would find more concerning, is that he hit it head-on.
I don't know if you caught this during the race, but when Austin Dillon blew a tire or lost his brakes, I don't remember which.
He purposely tried to nose it into the wall, as opposed to letting the car come around and back it into the wall for those exact reasons.
Yeah, heads up.
Could you imagine though, like 20 years, like some of the Pocono crashes that got really bad? If the driver was like, "Here, let me just hit this wall head on instead of trying to spin the car around and hit it with the back end."
Yeah, that is pretty nuts.
My point just being, I don't want to speculate in this. This isn't, who knows what this is. But if this is a concussion, NASCAR needs to reevaluate the protocol, because you cannot expect these drivers to take themselves out. This is not not. We don't even expect NFL players to do it, to be honest. But it is not even the same situation. If you miss a game, it's not a playoff game anyway in the NFL, chances are you're still going to be fine if you miss one game. Your season's not over. But for some of these guys, you miss one race, your season could effectively be over.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to point your way in and you miss a race, that could put you in a hole you can't recover from. It's possible.
Yeah.
And NASCAR, I'm sure, doesn't want to be the one that has to stop these guys from it, but I think they have to. If this is a concussion, they have to be stricter.
I mean, I will say that is one thing I do like about the playoff format. As much as I hate it, it does give the the ability
for this year for sure, where it's become an issue.
Yes, but I mean, like if you have to miss races, like in a season-long system, you're done. If you miss a race, you are done.
Yeah, you're done.
Even though you lay out a very good point, where you might not be able to recover if you're trying to race your way in on points. That's 100% true, but you still have the ability to get it.
Yeah.
Missing a race is not as bad as it used to be. That'd be the only thing I really like from the system, which is just, it is what it is at this point. And at least I could say it's entertaining, and that's about it. But we'll see. Going
through some more finishers, Chase Briscoe. Obviously a lot of people felt he didn't belong in round 8, and I don't think it's unfair to say, but such a solid run in the playoffs. Entered the playoffs with just 4 top 10s and got 5 top 10s in the last 6 races. Has had a great run in the playoffs. Stuart Haas as a whole has shown more speed lately. Maybe not Kevin Harvick, who feels like just feels like that's what happens with these playoff guys sometimes. Some of them get eliminated and it's just their season's over and they aren't a threat. Harvick had a decent run today. I don't remember where he ended up finishing, but he was in the top 10.
He slid back there at the end. Yeah.
But Briscoe's shown more speed. Custer, I think, has shown some more speed. Eric Almirola has shown more speed. So maybe some things turn around for them. But just a solid run for first run in the playoffs, round of 8. I don't know where he'll ultimately finish in the points. But round of 8, you contended. You pretty late in this race. I thought he was going to win. I thought he was going to win. I 100% thought he was gonna win the race. So,
speaking of Stuart Haas and their speed, I don't think anybody's been faster than their owner this weekend. Just a update on this, unrelated to NASCAR, but Tony Stewart narrowly edged out in his final race of the weekend in the NHRA, losing to Madison Payne by 2 10,000ths of a second.
Was that the
the drag race?
No, but was that the semifinal?
No, that was the finals. That was the finals. Made it to the finals.
Listen, I know Tony's really talented, but the fact that in his first race he almost won is
pretty crazy.
pretty crazy. Updated points, by the way. Currently leading our guys out is Denny Hamlin in 5th, William Byron in 6th, Larson in 7th, Ryan Blaney in 8th. Is the current rundown of those guys there. Byron only 11 back of Denny, so could certainly get that 5th spot, because I know that's what they are all looking for. Harvick needs, actually, probably not going to catch Alex Bowman, because I don't remember if we talked about this, but Alex Bowman will be back in the car for Phoenix. For Phoenix.
Yep.
Harvick's still 20 points back. So I was going to say Harvick probably can catch him. Still theoretically could, but Bowman actually back. So
I mean, Phoenix is Phoenix. Harvick's good there. This is Bowman's first race back. So I think it's still in play.
It's still in play. It is still certainly in play.
Yeah.
And I will say for Chase Briscoe, looking pretty solid for a top 10 points finish. 40 points up on Austin Dillon. Briscoe currently in 10th. So Austin Dillon looks like the best of the guys that were eliminated in the first round. He's in 11th, Reddick's in 13th, Kyle Busch 14th, and Kevin Harvick in 16th. So
that's another person we didn't touch on, but Kyle Busch, have you ever seen a worse car?
I was going to get to that. Listen. I think they did fix it because in the first stage he lost 4 laps, I'm pretty sure, and in the subsequent stages he, I believe, only lost 2 more laps. So maybe they got to fix them because that car was actually possessed.
That was one of the worst race cars I've ever seen.
I'm pretty sure he lost a lap in 20 laps at one point.
If I was him at like the end of stage 1, and I would have gotten out of the car.
I might have parked it.
I would have parked it, and then when Tyler Reddick pulled in, I would have jumped in my car for next year. That's what I would have done. But that was one of the worst race cars I've ever seen.
Absolutely awful. Just literally like finished behind Cody Ware, and Kyle Busch did not have any anything. Maybe they had something break.
Passed by BJ McLeod on track in that first stage.
It was absolutely awful. Was straight up last in the stage. No one had any issues yet, and he didn't have, as far as I know, nothing broke. I feel like if something broke, they would have lost more than 2 laps fixing it.
It looked like the tires were shredded. I saw pictures of the tires off the car at the end of stage 1, but it was
bad. Straight up bad. A couple other guys are rookies. Harrison Burton in 12th, and obviously Cindric is the rookie, but the other guys, Harrison Burton in 12th, Todd Gilliland in 14th, hung around all day. Pretty solid days. I think that about wraps up the finishing. Honestly, it was probably one of the more balanced in terms of what we would expect. 8 playoff guys, all of them finished in the top 11, outside of Byron and Briscoe when they had their issues. Well, Byron just started off in like 20 something, and Briscoe, when he had his issues, that the rest of the 6 spent most of the race in the top 10. Mm-hmm. I guess we mentioned a little bit, but just another fantastic race for Brad. They are a playoff contender next year.
Yeah, I would agree.
Round the top 5, certainly in the top 10, almost the whole race, except for when he got spun by Chastain, because Chastain just cooked it into the turn and still came back, finished 4th. Thought he had a shot to win. I mean, he did have a shot to win there. Just didn't. Bell had gotten too close already, and he had basically one chance to make that pass and couldn't make it.
Yeah, if he was able to get around him, and maybe he'd be able to get away if Bell couldn't follow him through. That would have been it, and he just couldn't make it happen. But still, a really good run there.
Entered last week with 0 top 5s. Now top 5s back-to-back weeks. Up to 23rd in the standings.
It's very reminiscent to his 2010 season at Penske, where he had nothing going for him all year. No top 10s. Got a couple top 10s late in the year, and he used that momentum to get 3 wins and have a breakout season in 2011, and ended up winning the championship in 2012. So you heard it here first.
Martinsville was his only top 10, in his rookie year. I think he finished 6th.
Yeah,
no, he had 2. I think he had 2, but they were both
back-to-back races.
They were back-to-back races, and they were both like 6.
So you heard it here first, guys. Brad Keselowski, 2024 NASCAR Cup Series champion.
Obviously a lot of people have missed races, but if he did not get his penalty, Brad would currently be 19th in points. Now, granted, if Bubba didn't get suspended, he'd have another race up, and if Buescher didn't,
Michael McDowell will be too.
Actually, I mean, he's ahead of McDowell now.
All right.
So he would just straight up be ahead of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Buescher's far enough back because Buescher only missed 1 race, right?
Yeah, he only missed 1.
So he would be Buescher would still be far enough back that, I mean, even if Buescher didn't miss that race, he would still probably be behind Brad. So I mean, solid rebound from once he got that penalty. They were kind of just stuck in 30th the whole time. Couldn't really do anything and just were stuck there. Finally still started clawing his way up to 23rd and has some shot at 22nd catching Justin Haley, but I think solid rebound on the season. Race for top 20 in the points will be is pretty set. Buescher's 31 back of Eric Almirola. So he'd have to catch up there. And hey, listen, if somehow, some way Corey LaJoie can get 39 points at Phoenix, he could finally pass Kurt Busch to finish top 30 in the standings. So for all those people that asked if Kurt would fall out of the top 30 once he got injured, the answer was no. for the whole season, apparently, not even just the playoffs. It was pretty clear the answer was no for the playoffs, or for going into the playoffs.
I'll give one more driver I don't believe you mentioned, just a shout out here, and not for good reasons. Martin Truex Jr. I think that's the first time anybody has said his name all day today. Completely invisible, 21st, 2 laps down.
He was mentioned at one point because I think he was near like Byron, and they were like racing for a spot, and Byron made an aggressive move, and that was the one time I remember hearing Martin Truex Jr.'s name mentioned. You have to wonder, like, does he regret coming back for next year?
I mean, he almost coulda, shoulda, woulda won Homestead, So
that is true. That is true.
He was there. If things go a little bit differently, if he could see his pit box, if Kyle Larson wasn't that close to him, who knows?
Basically, because reality is basically every good guy, every like solid, like consistent championship contender from the last 10 years, this is their worst season. This is one of Logano's statistically worst seasons outside of wins, and he's in the Final Four. Just like that's how much parity there's had, which makes these seasons seem particularly bad for guys like Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, because I mean they have been, but just compared to their peaks, they're even worse.
Yeah. So
Truex, by the way, in full season standings, down to 7th in the standings, but can only really fall one more spot. So
yeah, well, I'm sure Martin Truex Jr. definitely wants the season to be over soon, but we're running a little long here. How did those picks go this week?
Not the worst. Not the worst. They've certainly gone worse before. In the Xfinity series, I picked Justin Allgaier to win. You picked Ty Gibbs to win. I don't think you're happy that you were right, but you were right.
I'm definitely not, because I had the potential to win a lot more money if Brandon Jones won that race and made the Final Four.
Ty Gibbs did in fact win the race. For value picks, you had Landon Castle. I think he had something happen. I think the car broke or something.
Yeah, he had a problem.
I picked Sheldon Creed, who finished 2nd. So really, with those value guys, anytime I get a guy in the top 5, I feel like that's almost a win. Like, obviously, you don't win the bet, but that's what you kind of are hoping for. That's how you know you were on the right track. For our head-to-heads, you had Gibbs over Gregson, which worked. Again, I'm sure you're super thrilled that it did.
Yes,
totally. I had Brandon Jones over AJ Allmendinger, which about as close as I could be without being right. Three quarters of a lap. For the Cup race, I picked Ryan Blaney. He finished 3rd. You picked Kyle Busch.
Yeah, I would like to say I had somebody else as my value pick that made me feel a lot better. At least I was cheering for someone at the end still.
Yeah, I had AJ Allmendinger. They went a lap down early, which was not shocking. You basically, for the most part, you qualified bad, you finished bad. Not universally true, obviously. A couple guys could make their way through the field. Christopher Bell, by the way, could make his way through the field even earlier on. Like, he was halfway through stage 1, already the most spots gained, up to like 12th or something. So they had a good car. You've won because of strategy, but they had a good car either way. For the value picks, yeah, you had Brad though, so that ended up pretty solid run. Looked like it was gonna hit.
Quite exciting there, man. It was getting exciting at the end.
For Group A, it was Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron. I had Blaney, you had Byron. Blaney was the highest finishing guy from this group. Group B, Logano, Truex, Chastain, and Christopher Bell. It was Christopher Bell. We both picked Christopher Bell. Group C, Larson, Harvick, Busch, and Reddick. We both picked Busch. And I will say we did not finish the worst in the group. That would have been Tyler Reddick. It took him getting some kind of sick, but Kyle Busch did beat somebody in his group. Winner of this group was Kyle Larson, who finished 2nd. And Group D was Brad Keselowski, Bubba Wallace, Eric Almirola, and Austin Dillon. I picked Bubba Wallace. You picked Brad Keselowski, which obviously hit, though Bubba Wallace did finish 2nd in this group.
Yeah, solid run for Bubba there, and his welcome back race.
His welcome back one. So all in all, we each got 2, which 2 out of 2 when you have to pick 4 out of 4 guys is pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely some pluses there, and yeah, I mean, I wish Brad just was able to execute there a little bit better at the end. Wanted to see him get that win and continue that streak of winning races, for X amount of years, whatever it's at. But I'm feeling good going into next year as a Brad Keselowski fan. So
I was very, very down earlier in the year. Very, very down. But I agree. I think it's been good. I am pretty excited for next year and how this season will pan out. For really everybody, but especially for Brad. Guys like Brad and Busher, who've shown a lot of speed lately and could certainly win multiple races next year.
Mm-hmm. So,
or could win none because
yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Who really knows?
That's gonna do it for all the betting and stuff. And any final thoughts here before we sign off?
Breaking news: the 6 car has been disqualified.
Are you serious?
For not meeting minimum weight requirements per NASCAR's rulebook.
You gotta be effing kidding me.
Dead serious. Does not change anything since he finished ahead of everybody.
There goes all those. I might want to run down the bets again.
Well, I guess with that, really the only change, I just closed it. Let me open it back up. But good thing I happened to just check Twitter for a second, and good thing it's not anything super crazy, so we don't have to go for another hour. I guess then with that, neither of us, or no, I won that one. You lost that one. So you went 1-3. I went 3-1.
Well, fan-freaking-tastic. That is A+ right there. That sums up this year altogether.
Like literally, by the way, like just happened. Like first tweet I see of it is 7 minutes ago. So when I first looked, about 5. So just happened to refresh Twitter and see that. So
you said you wish you were on when they announced the DQ for Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch at Pocono. I guess this
isn't quite to that level, but it is close. It is close.
Well, great. That's I'm gonna kind of rewind and backtrack a little bit. The car still had speed. I haven't heard anybody getting a minimum weight penalty. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, NASCAR. We can penalize Brad for something I've never heard, but we'll let Ross keep his spot. But
that is true for Bob mentioned. That is now 6 spots that Chastain gained since the white flag.
Oh boy.
This one took a little bit longer.
Chase Elliott a top 10.
I was gonna say, gets Chase Elliott a top 10, and
20th top 10 on the season.
Top 5 for Denny Hamlin. So yeah, top 10 for Chase. All that puts all 8 playoff guys in the top 10.
Wow.
So now he has a chance to tie last year's top 10 mark. Well, so another thing with Chase, right? I guess that's my closing note in terms of the level of parity. Like Chase has been arguably the best this season. That's not shocking or a crazy take or anything. Still is guaranteed to finish with at least 2 less top 5s than last year, and at best can tie last year's top 10 mark now, and still 1 off his career high. So I don't know if this is going to be the permanent. Are we going to because 20 top 10s was like the bare minimum you would expect from the top guys. And now there is a chance nobody gets it, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure Chase is leading our top 10s. Oh, yeah. Actually, I take that back. Ross already has 20.
Oh,
Ross has 20. Chase now has 20. I guess Bell is 1 short. So we could have 3 guys, and the most they could have is 21. Like that is really low for the most guys. Only 1 guy can even hit 15 top 5s, and that's Ross. So I don't know. We won't know for probably a couple years, honestly, if this is the new norm or if someone will. I still expect the good teams will find out something. They always have, but will it be something that's worth a lot or a little? Will it take us back to the era, closer to the era of before, or is now closer to the new normal? We won't know for a couple years, but if NASCAR can get the bad things together, it is a pretty exciting time, to be honest.
Wow. I'm just happy Brad didn't win that race now. This must have been how Jimmy Johnson's fans felt 600. So that sucks, but hey, this is what it is. 6 cars showed speed, and hopefully they continue that.
Imagine if one of them had made it in by like a point, and Brad was in between them, and instead Brad was ahead of all of them, so they all gained a point. So nothing.
Oh man, well, Yeah, that sucks. Do you have any other final thoughts before breaking the disqualification of Brad Keselowski?
No, I mean, just honestly, decent-ish race, good weekend, decent Cup race, better than I expected. Still one of the lower of the seasons. I am probably now more excited for the finale than I have been last couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Exciting stuff, crazy things, and hopefully we see most of the same. Not a wall ride to the championship, but most of the same. I do fully expect, if NASCAR does not make any kind of rule change, somebody to try it. Don't know if it'll work for sure, because like I said, it certainly does not as easy, and you're certainly not going to gain as much. But if they don't make a rule, someone in some series is going to try it. That's my prediction.
I would definitely agree with that. I don't really have anything else to say except, man, that sucks that the 6 cars going all the way back to the rear. And hopefully nothing crazy like that in terms of anyone being disqualified happens at Phoenix. But hey, it was a pretty solid weekend of racing action. Probably the best one that we've had across the board in all the series that we're running over the last 2.5, 3 months. So at least there's that. A lot of controversy, a lot of excitement, and I'm sure Phoenix will continue that momentum that we had from this weekend. So we'll be back in a couple days to preview all the championship races from the desert. And until then, guys, thanks for listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Brandon Monroe here. Thanks for listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Remember to keep listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform. And remember to follow us at Bernie Breakdown on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all of our other social media platforms.